If there is something that I truly believe in and truly, like, if I set myself a certain goal, and I don't do it lightly. There's a lot of thinking that goes into it, but once I commit to something, there's no holding me back. And that was one of those scenarios where I was like, I think I would, like, I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to do this. And then I truly went for it. It was not easy, don't get me wrong. And I was like, throughout last year especially, it was such a roller coaster. And I was like going through so much doubt and like, am I crazy for even trying this? Like after 10 years of building success in Europe, I'm now literally starting from scratch and doing it all over again. Like, why am I putting myself in this situation?
Welcome to Transatlantic Titans, the show for Europeans making it big in America. And here is your host, Manny Schoenhuber.
Welcome to Transatlantic Titans, the show about Europeans making it big in America. I am your host, Manny Schoenhuber, and today we have yet another very special transatlantic Titan. His name is Sven Kueenle. Sven, welcome to the show. Thanks a lot for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm definitely excited to be here.
Sven, let's dive right in. First, obviously, we want to get to know you personally. We want to get to know your company, the line of business that you're in, what you're doing here in the US for a bit better. So could you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Who is Sven? What's your story?
Yeah, absolutely. How far do you want me to go back?
All the way.
All the way. All right. Well,
we have all the time.
I'm Sven Kueenle. I'm actually a former professional skier. So I've been doing that for a long time, 20 years of professional skiing, primarily free skiing. So I traveled the globe and was fortunate enough to do that for a living and ski in some of the most awesome places on the planet. So that's my background as a skier, born and raised in Germany. I am from Munich. Once I came to realize that my skiing career is going to end someday, I basically transitioned into the real estate business. I've been doing that for almost a decade now, and started out doing that in Germany before I then transitioned into the US market in early 2024. And I suppose that is what brings us together today, Manny.
Yeah, obviously, I'm not going to let you off the hook quite easily as a former not so professional athlete myself and an avid skier. Obviously, I have to ask you to tell us a little bit about more. You said you pretty much skied, have seen some of the most beautiful areas in the world. I mean, how did you get into the whole skiing scene? Is it growing up in Munich, growing up in Bavaria, and just having the mountains right in front of you and say, hey, that looks like a good idea. Let me get on skis and down the slopes, and then transitioning into real estate. So maybe elaborate a little bit on that, because I think it also drives the competitiveness that not only athletes, but then also businessmen may have.
Yeah, for sure. So, for me, even as like a little kid, just being outside when there was snow in the yard and being in the mountains was like the one thing I always wanted to do. That was like my absolute ultimate happy place. Like there was, nothing else that I wanted to do more than being on skis and in the snow. So it really very early on developed as like a passion of mine. And when people asked me when I was like 6 years old what I'm going to be when I'm grown up, I would promptly answer I'm going to be a skier, as if it was like the most, normal job anybody could have. So, but I guess I kind of followed that passion and then started competing as a ski racer, did like the classic route of the alpine skiing, and then when I was like 16, that's when most of my friends started snowboarding at the time, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, when snowboarding was cool.
The cool
I
thing
really
to do.
like what's that?
The cool thing to do.
The cool thing to do, yeah. And I really, like the way they were riding on their boards. But at the same time, I didn't want to, quit skiing. So I kind of just, followed their tracks and was like getting really into that type of riding, I guess. And that's when I really started transitioning into free skiing. And then It was like I think in 2000 or 1999 or something, when Glenn Blake and Seth Morrison with the K2 team was over in Germany, or in Austria actually, for a ski camp, and that's when I got the opportunity to ski with those guys. And I mean, they were, obviously legends. And so um yeah, I got to ski with them, and then they took some, film, or filmed me skiing, and that turned into my first sponsor, which was K2 at the time. And from then on, it eventually turned into a professional career, and I started competing, doing pretty well. And yeah, then I just, finished high school. The next day, literally, I was on the plane to Canada to just pursue my skiing career. And then for, as I said, almost 20 years, I've done nothing but. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey for sure.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned it. Since you were little, you didn't want to do anything else. Do you remember those little friendship books that friends had us fill out in kindergarten or elementary school? What do you want to be when you grow up? And
Yeah.
so, uh, share that anecdote from myself. Up until second grade, I always wrote that I wanted to be a farmer, and after that, I wanted to be a professional soccer player or football player. So maybe that is why I didn't make it all the way to the big leagues, because it wasn't the real dream. Should have stick with farming instead.
That's funny that you say that. I had farming and a helicopter pilot were my second and third options.
That's hilarious, yeah, because then afterwards, I thought it'd be a good idea to become an airline pilot. So maybe not a helicopter, but then football or soccer got in the way. Yet here we are today. I'm a lawyer, you're a real estate investor. It all
What
worked out.
happened?
Yeah, that's what happens. If you're watching this, this can
Yeah.
happen.
Man.
Anyways, Sven, where are you currently based? I know you're in between Germany and the US still, but kind of what are your home bases, or what's your home away from home in the US?
Yeah, I wouldn't even really know how to answer it, but yeah, you kind of did it already. I mean, I'm pretty much 50-50 between Munich and Houston these days. So Munich obviously being my real base, or actual base, and then with, the US expansion, we are in Houston. So that's where I'm also just about 50% of my time these days.
Yeah, so maybe before we talk about what you do here on the US side, you've already mentioned that after your professional skiing career, you did real estate in Germany. So maybe talk a little bit about this, and then what's the name of your company now here in Houston, so that we can transition over to
Yeah.
maybe today. And maybe
Yeah,
also
absolutely.
say why real estate.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, frankly, as I was still a professional skier, I had like no idea what it is that, my life will be like after the sports. Like, for the longest time, I couldn't even envision anything beyond or after the sports. And skiing was like what it really truly taught me, and was, I guess, how important freedom is to me. And essentially, the way I was able to ski and do that sport was the ultimate expression of freedom to me. So very early on, I knew that that's something that I really truly want to maintain throughout my life, one way or in some shape or form, I guess. And so it became pretty transparent to me that I want to, be more on the entrepreneurial side rather than being an employee selling skis for a ski brand or something like that. And so I was thinking, like, what, what is it that could do? And so actually, I eventually just discovered real estate, like, by total coincidence, through my girlfriend. Actually, she was already like investing, and she's a lot smarter than me. So she kind of got me into the world of real estate, really. And that's when I started, while I was still skiing, to just invest in like small like condos and apartments. And that really triggered a spark where I was like, man, this is really interesting. It has a lot of potential, and also it's something that I started to be passionate about. And so I've always been I mean, fortunately and lucky enough to sort of follow my passion, and really real estate and that kind of investing turned into a true passion of mine. And so I started super small, very organically. We literally bought, small apartments and condos. Started doing, the rehabs and renovations myself in the summer months while I was not skiing, and then flipped those apartments and reinvested that capital into the next project. Started buying small multifamily deals and started building a portfolio. And I partnered with a friend of mine. He also was a skier. And together we, over the next like 7, 8 years, developed SBI Real Estate, which is the European company. And yeah, started from like literally nothing and built it to a decent company that, did all kinds of real estate projects, from fix and flip to buy and hold, multifamily, condo conversions, office conversions, and land development projects. That was basically the whole spectrum of what we did back then.
And then, since you mentioned freedom, obviously the next best thing was the land of the free, right? So you had to look to the US and bring your business to the US. So what's the company you run in the US now called?
So we are called Rockfish Capital here in the US. Yeah, I mean, for one, I've always been following the US market. Throughout my skiing career, I spent most of my time in North America, and I've always been, very interested in the US markets. And then speaking of real estate, obviously, the United States has, the biggest real estate economy in the world. So it is an interesting market to start with. On top of that was the fact that, we had the war in Ukraine started, the energy crisis as a result of that, the interest rate hikes and politics. All of those metrics in Germany were, a reason for me to look at real estate on a more global scale. That's when I was, making the move to look very closely at the US market, because also in the US, as I said, I've always been following the market. And of course, the years from like 2008, 2009, all the way to 2022 have gone nothing but up. And it's been a real estate boom. But now with the interest rate hikes, we really did see a sudden shift in the market. And to me, that was an indication or an indicator, or just generally an interesting time to say, well, now is an interesting time to enter into a new market, right? So the timing just worked out. I've always been interested in the market, and I saw a lot of potential, and that was essentially why I decided to make the move into the US market.
So, of course, you have this entire, let's say, North American continent or the United States as a country. You have 50 states to pick from. Which state, which area did you actually decide to go with, and maybe why? Because again, even if I'm looking out the window, Houston or the state of Texas is larger than Munich and the country of Germany, right?
Yeah.
The two of us are pretty much in the same boat, from kind of the small Bavarian areas to big HTX, as they say.
Yeah.
How come, and maybe why?
Yeah, well, absolutely, and good question. Well, in fact, Texas is twice the size of Germany. Just puts it, that's just one state in the U.S. out of 50, as you just mentioned. So that really does put it into perspective. And yes, the U.S. is not the U.S. There's very different markets, of course. The reason why I ended up in Texas is certainly not for the skiing.
Water skiing.
So that's actually a funny twist here, because I mean, out of all places, Texas is probably the last where I would have ever envisioned myself while I was still actively skiing.
So
But now
safe to say
from
it was a true lifestyle decision that you made, right?
absolutely. But from a real estate and economics perspective, I mean, if you look at the US, and there's a lot of migration happening within the nation, right? It's not so much like immigration, but just like the migration that happened, especially around COVID within the country, has like, or shows very clear patterns. And what's noticeable is that obviously, a state, or Texas in particular, is one of the states that has continuously shown population growth, economic growth, and frankly, companies that move from the expensive states like California and New York, for instance, into areas like Texas. And that were essentially the fundamentals that made a lot of sense for me to look at this particular market. I mean, Houston is the fourth largest city in the US, but it is one of the most affordable cities in the US, large cities in the US. It is number one in population growth, and it's number one in projected job growth through 2029. And on top of that, Texas is a very landlord friendly state. So that to me, obviously made a lot of sense. And that's why, yeah, I picked Houston as our market entry point, if you wish.
And of course, as every real estate broker, when you're buying your first single family home will tell you, it's all about location, 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 right? And real estate. So maybe that also plays a role. But you already mentioned that you set up your US company. When was that? When did you set it up? How long have you been in business now in the US?
I mean, so I came here in like in January of 2024, when my girlfriend and I were on vacation, and I took the opportunity to stick around and look at the Texas market. I mean, then I kind of just started really, looking at the market, building a network. And obviously, as you can imagine, coming into a new, not only country, but continent with I mean, I literally started from scratch. So from first basically getting here and taking my first peek at the market to closing our first deal it took 18 months. So really the company, I mean, I came here in January 2024. I founded Rockfish Capital legally in, I guess, November of 2024. And then in June 2025, we closed our first deal.
And onward and upward since then. So maybe let's talk about this. Let's talk about your overall business model, because obviously it is not just for you to park your wealth, so to speak, right? Because there's an actual real estate investment business behind it. So maybe explain that a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what we do is we invest in multifamily real estate communities or properties with 150 plus units. And we do that in a so-called syndication structure, meaning that we have the capital stack that we structure the deals with, which is the actual and then the equity, which is a syndication from ourselves plus additional investors. So as an investor, you can come into our deal as an equity partner basically and benefit from the large scale real estate assets that we invest in. And that model also is frankly one of the reasons or one of the opportunities that I see here in the US for us as an operator, because we have a lot more flexibility in structuring those type of deals compared to what I know from back home, for example. So that, is also one advantage that I'm seeing here.
Maybe since, as you know, the name of the show is Transatlantic Titans, we're trying to build that transatlantic bridge. I think one of the nuances that also makes your business model interesting is the markup or the makeup, so to speak. Not the markup, there is a markup, I'm sure, but the makeup of your investors as well, right? Because at least the way I understand it, you're still having the ties to not only the US and the investors here, but then also to Europe or maybe more locally Germany and investors from there.
Yes, absolutely. So I think, I mean, what might set us apart a little bit is that we obviously provide that bridge through me as the owner of the company, to where we have or allow European and German equity to invest directly into US assets. I mean, we're frankly not the only ones, but compared to a lot of US competitors, for example, I mean, we allow it's under the so-called Regulation S for international investors to come into our projects. Now, there is, from a compliance standpoint, and the complexity is a little more than if you just work with US capital, which is why a lot of US competitors don't necessarily like doing that, but that's what we, I guess, specialize on, just simply because of the nature that I, have my roots in Germany. And so, yeah, we basically provide that opportunity for German investors to invest directly in US assets.
And I think that's the crucial difference, right? Because obviously on the show, we're not giving any financial or investment advice, but you're showing the opportunity that others may not offer to European investors that are open to investments abroad, to diversification into the dollar and real hard assets, because maybe you talk about this as well. Ideally, value add component to your investments as well, right? Where you actually come in and then maybe improve the operations of the multifamily.
Yes, absolutely. And operations was the number one focus that I had when I first started building my network and my and the company here, frankly. The most important thing in real estate investing is the operational aspect of it through property management. So we have a very strong partner that we work with, and that's what we take pride in, and frankly also I feel like I mean, we have a real boots on the ground approach, and I think that's super important to have. And I mean, we're talking just the other day, actually, I was going through Google and like reading our reviews from the tenants that, live at our property, which we only or took over 4 months ago, and we got nothing but 5-star reviews. And that really speaks for that quality that we bring to the table, and that's where we, I guess, take pride in, because that essentially makes or breaks how you succeed with real estate investments.
So, first of all, of course, congratulations to that. But then, do you think that might have something to do with your approach of working with a local team, but then also you bringing your transatlantic or German culture to the table? And yes, I still think I may be biased in saying that, but your competitiveness, being an athlete, has something to do with it as well. But don't you think it could be a good combination so that your tenants ultimately get the best of both worlds?
I would sure hope so. And I mean, I think there is a certain truth to that, because I think we might bring a pretty good combination of the two worlds together. So for one, you have, like, I'm the only non-US person on the entire team. So but I definitely bring this like German accuracy to the equation, right? And I probably, unlike Americans would generally do it, I really turn every single or question every single analysis that we make, basically. But compare that or combine that with, the excellent job the management is doing, and just the competitive edge that everyone on my team is bringing to the table. It makes a really good mix. And frankly, it's not, I'm just one small component in the equation, but my team is super strong. Like, and we are, so on the acquisition side, we got Alex. He's a former professional hockey player. He's killing it. He's doing such a good job, and just that drive that everybody has. Tyler on the asset management side as well, and same goes for property management. And it's a lot of fun to see how passionate each and every one on my team is to work together and turn those projects into a success.
So, speaking of your team and coming from sports again, we're always getting back to that. Obviously, I also take a team approach when it comes to the legal industry and giving advice to clients. But how crucial do you really think that is in entrepreneurial business, especially cross-cultural success and operations? Because you already said it, you're probably spending 50-50 in Germany and locally in the US. You have to rely on your team members, so to speak, to keep the lights on while you're not there, right? So it must be crucial to your success.
Absolutely. And it really is. And again, I couldn't be more thankful for the team that I was able to put in place. I mean, we're a small, very small company. We're talking about like, in total we were like 13 people on the team, but we're very efficient, and each one, as I said, is doing a great job. And especially, and I notice it a lot, I think what I was able to do is share a vision that people follow. And that goes a long way, because at the end of the day, it's not me trying to force anybody to do anything, or none of this. Like anybody on my team knows the assignment, and they all, take pride in their own achievements, and that is why I think we will be very successful, to be honest.
I like that, and we're gonna talk about the future outlook and everything that you have. But since you mentioned, obviously, I have to ask you, and I'm a big proponent. If you put things out in the universe, they somehow happen, right? And if you set your goals a certain way, so is the vision something that you share on your website, that your investors become aware of, that obviously your team strives by, and that I know you get up very early in the morning to go work out. Is that something you also yeah live by, so to speak, and put out into the world for everyone to know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for one, we are here to build a significant portfolio. The number at this time being, 10,000 units that we want to establish as a portfolio in size. But on top of that, what really what really drives us is the fact that we want to enhance the quality of life for the people that we work with. And that goes for both our tenants and our communities that we cater. And that's why I mentioned the 5-star reviews earlier. And of course, the investors that we work with. So the real estate business truly is a people's business. And, with that kind of investing that we do, we have a big responsibility for a lot of people, because as I said, I mean, we cater to a lot of people, and it's not just some product, it's actually their homes, their living space. So this goes a long way, and I think it has a big impact, right? And so we want to do that right, and that's, I think, what we really thrive by.
So obviously, I find it fascinating because I was in a similar position when I decided to go to the US, haven't even visited the country, just said, okay, let me get on this plane. If the you know what hits the proverbial fan, I can always get on the next plane back home to Germany and continue to live my life there. But did you have like any role models or anybody that shaped your decision to enter the US market with your company and with your business model as such? Or was this just something like, hey, I can do it and others have done it before? The classic American dream story.
Yeah, I think it was probably the latter. So I wouldn't even know of a true role model who's gone that path. I just saw an opportunity and I wanted to take it. And there's something, I guess, about me. If there is something that I truly believe in, and truly, like, if I set myself a certain goal, and I don't do it lightly. There's a lot of thinking that goes into it, but once I commit to something, there's no holding me back. And that was one of those scenarios where I was like, I think I would I mean, I got to the point where I was like, I'm gonna do this, and then I truly went for it. It was not easy, to don't get me wrong, and I was like, I mean, throughout last year especially, it was such a roller coaster, and I was like going through so much doubt, and like, am I crazy for even trying this? Like, after 10 years of building success in Europe, I'm now literally starting from scratch and doing it all over again. Like, why am I putting myself in this situation? It was super stressful, and it still is a huge challenge, but I kind of enjoy every step on the way right now.
I think that is really also the combination or the uniting aspect of not just entrepreneurs or business owners in the real estate profession, right? It's probably any European business leader that is thinking about entering the US market with a US subsidiary and not going through a cross-border M&A transaction where you're purchasing an existing company with 50 employees, or you could have acquired an existing portfolio of 50,000 units. Like you said, you're starting from scratch. So I think, and I would actually say, I know, working with other European clients that are considering this move or are going through it, they probably have the same doubts.
Yeah.
Then if you have the grit and the strive to go through it, I think that is key then to maybe not looking at only the short-term success and having to be profitable from day one, but fighting it out, so to speak.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think you have to have that fire, and you have to have that, like, that true vision that drives you to do it. Otherwise, I mean, I don't think it would have been possible for me if it was just to make money, let's say. Like that, there's no way I could have succeeded if that was the only driver.
And I would say that applies to any type of business, at
Yeah,
least
absolutely.
what I'm seeing. And in
Yeah.
particular, being foreigners in the US, right? Coming from Europe and saying, hey, I'm going to do this and I'll fight through the good times and bad times, right? So maybe that is the competitive spirit that we already talked about. So maybe if there is one thing that you say sets your company or your business model apart from the competitors in the US market, maybe even American competitors, is there something that you'd say aside from maybe what you've already mentioned and the great team that you have?
Ooh, I don't know. Those were, I guess, strong arguments. I think access to, or just that transatlantic sort of bridge that we provide, accompanied with the team that we put in place. I mean, in most other areas, I would not go as far as that we have like a competitive advantage necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of good people out there doing, that type of business. So it's, yeah, there's strong competition out there. So
But I
it's
think
no walk in the park.
that's right. But I also think that the business community, and it's the same in the legal profession, right? It's probably small enough so that you know who the real competitors are and the ones that hold themselves out in the public as very reputable, in your case, operators, real
Yeah.
estate operators and investment providers, and the ones that are not so reputable, right? So it's probably all about that reputation, whether you're in the legal, the tax, the banking, the real estate business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we already talked a little bit about it, but cultural differences and maybe also from your perspective, regulatory hurdles that you may have encountered in real estate development, real estate investment in Germany, anything that you had to adapt to, that you had to do differently? Has it been a pleasant experience so far in the US? Maybe elaborate a little bit on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, and there's distinct differences for sure. I think, for one, what I appreciate is the flexibility and the speed of how things get done, also on a structural and legal side. But there also is a certain complexity, especially as you, out of all people, know very well on the legal side, right? So that's probably the unpleasant side, I would say. And that was for me a little bit of a, yeah, challenge to adapt to, I guess. And just like how everything, literally everything, is like happens like on a I mean, there's no country like the US, I don't think, where you literally have to like triple think about everything, because there's a real opportunity or a real chance that you're going to get sued for something, right? So, and I mean, that was for sure something I had to adapt to, or still have not adapt to, I guess.
May also be just part of a different system, right? Where it's
Exactly. Yes.
just something we're not used to. How about, I mean, as much as you feel comfortable sharing, but when you're talking about the deals and how you're evaluating those for your investors, is there the overall opportunities, or are the overall opportunities in the market similar to, let's say, Germany, or are they completely different? And then maybe if there's a regulatory aspect to it, let's say you have to deal with a city, you have to deal with a county with those ordinances. Any differences you've noticed now since you started out here?
I mean, generally speaking, if you compare the two markets like Europe or Germany with the US real estate market, and let's stick with Texas maybe, but there's definitely vast differences. For one, on the regulatory side, obviously, as I mentioned, we have a very landlord-friendly environment in Texas with, no rent control, something that is very different in Germany. So the influence from politics in Germany is very strong, much like it would be in the US, maybe in California or New York. But that's something that's really different, and I appreciate it because the market it's really the market that dictates the business. But it also, in my opinion, is so much more healthy. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, Houston, for example, even though there's no rent control and all this stuff, we have one of the most affordable cities in the country. So it just shows what a functioning market looks like, in my opinion. And that's part of why we operate in markets like here.
Maybe also then from a business perspective, since we're still on the differences between Germany and Texas or Germany and the US, how do you approach things like branding or marketing differently? Because obviously you not only have to brand yourself to potential sellers, current investors that you're trying to acquire a piece of property from, but you're also branding and selling to your potential investors. And on top of that, you also want to recruit employees. So maybe a difference in setup, maybe a difference in approach that you could explain there.
Sure. I mean, for one, since we're doing syndications structures, right? So marketing is subject to the SEC regulations. So we have to, stay compliant to whatever the regulations are. In our case, let's say if we do a C, for example, as you know, we market to accredited investors, and that allows us to go pretty broad on through, our website, social media, and that type of stuff. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we also do Regulation S to international investors. And so that's something where we obviously have to stay compliant to the regulations. And then as far as structuring goes, as I said earlier, I think that is something that where I see so much more flexibility, and it's so much easier to structure our deals to then market them to potential investors. That's something I've tried similar setups in Germany, and it's much more complicated and would be a lot more costly than it is here, for example.
So we're going to move to the next segment of the show, which is called the Core Four.
Next up, the Core Four.
The Core Four may be a familiar concept from my book. Obviously, you have them as well. Your Core Four team members, the lawyer, the CPA, the banker, and the insurance broker. So I'm also using this concept to ask the same 4 questions to every guest on every episode. And hopefully we can also gather more information and a better understanding about your journey in US market so far. The first question of the Core Four is, we're talking about challenges. From your perspective, and looking back since you started setting up or even considered setting up your US enterprise, what are or have been the biggest challenges you've faced in the US market? And maybe also how you've tackled them.
Yeah, I briefly mentioned one. Obviously, coming to a new continent comes with challenges to begin with. So, the big challenges obviously were no network, no team, and no real experience on the market yet. So that all had to. That took a certain amount of time and effort to establish. And then once that was set up, speaking more on I guess, the project and actual business level, what's certainly been a bit of a challenge was or currently in the market, what we're seeing in the real estate space is that there is a rent compression. And it's triggered through multiple reasons. Probably one being the immigration laws that are happening right now, that especially in markets like Houston, where there's a strong Hispanic demographic, for example, where there's certainly pressure because of that. And that's been an unexpected, to be honest, challenge. And we see across the board that occupancies in those communities have been a struggle. At the same time, it's awesome to see how my team is able to pivot and really sort of make adjustments and move into a direction that we didn't originally plan to still, outperform our original projections. But that's definitely been a challenge in our business plan.
So from every challenge, there comes a lesson learned, which is obviously the second question of the core four. Now, with the knowledge that you do have, and maybe if you were able to go back in time, what would you do if you could differently regarding either the US market entry or in general business operations that you've learned from? I don't want to call them mistakes, but certain challenges you faced. And if you could give any advice to other European companies, obviously that would be appreciated as well.
Yeah. I mean, for that challenge in particular, I mean, it's real time market data that we're seeing and obviously taking into consideration moving forward with our underwriting. So we immediately adapted it moving forward into deals that we're currently underwriting. So we just have like a slightly higher vacancy rate in there, for example. And I think that's, it's just important to, especially in markets like here in the US, it's a very dynamic market in general. So you just have to also be very dynamic and flexible with things that happen. And again, it's good to have a strong team that is able to pivot if necessary. As far as advice to European companies goes, I think I would be a little more broad on it. But I think what's important for European in companies when they move to the US is just the understanding of the difference in culture and mentality. I think that's something a lot of the times I think mistakenly Europeans think that the US is just like Europe in a different location, but that's really far from the truth. Especially when doing business, you have to be aware of that.
So, talked about the challenges, the lessons learned. Let's talk about the future. And you already talked about it a little bit, of course, earlier. But what's your company's outlook, or as you called it, the vision for growth in the US market? And not just generally about hard numbers, but really about what you're trying to accomplish in the US. And of course, there are different aspects to it. You mentioned your tenants. You talked about living spaces. Obviously, you talked about units. But in general, is there anything else that you would want to add to that?
I mean, I can just say it in a more generalized manner, I guess. And I think what we are here to achieve is to become one of the main players on the real estate market in the Texas market for sure and beyond. And I think, I mean, we are a very ambitious company and we have very ambitious goals, but that's also what makes it exciting.
Yes, that is exciting for sure. So, with that, obviously, there are certain success factors, and you've, to a certain extent, already had some success in the US with first deals and others on the line, your first deal and others on the line. But what do you think, maybe also the athlete's mind coming back here? What do you think sets successful European companies or even individuals here in the US apart from the, as we say in quotation marks, not so successful ones that may never reach their financial potential or even exit the US market again after a few years?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I don't know if I'm qualified to answer it, but I, wh- from my experience and what I think is that you have to be committed to start with, and then you have to understand the culture, the cultural differences, and the mentality differences. I think that is very crucial to succeed in the U.S. market, in my opinion, anyway.
So those were the core four. Means we're moving on to the next segment of the show, our rapid fire this or that, which is essentially six questions.
All right,
I'll give you two options. You can only pick one. You ready for that?
I guess I'm ready.
And now, rapid fire, this or that.
Let's hit it.
And obviously, I have to tell you, I had to tie them a little bit closer to your experience and your overall approach. So, question number one. The Alps or the Rockies?
The Alps.
Question number 2, mulled wine or 𝗧𝗥𝗔𝗡𝗦?
𝗧𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏.
No comments to any of those from my answer. Question number 3, après-ski or first chair?
First chair. That's an easy one.
Question number 4, fondue or schnitzel?
Fondue. I don't eat meat.
That's surprising. I didn't even know that. See, I learned something. Was that not you eating the Schweinshaxen at Oktoberfest?
That was not me.
That was not you.
That was most definitely not me.
Question number 5, powder or groomers?
A powder.
Of the rapid fire, 𝗧𝗥𝗔𝗡𝗦𝗔𝗡𝗧𝗏, which is a mountain hut evening or city nightlife.
A Hüttenabend.
Next also brings us to the final segment of the show, which is the closing. Anything, you already mentioned it to a certain extent, but partnerships, collaborations that really have been key to your success in the US so far?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the number one collaboration is property management. That is one of our most important and strongest partnerships. And then along those lines also goes legal partners. And obviously I'm in good hands with you, but that, yeah, is almost equally as important because every transaction obviously heavily depends on that. So those are probably the two, and or lenders, of course, CPAs. I mean, the list continues to go on, but property management and legal and lenders would be the top three.
Great. So, any then first impressions of doing business in America? Were there any like culture shock experiences or things like that? Maybe within those partnerships, within those collaborations, but also with, let's say, the Houston market or Texas or the US as a whole in general?
I mean, on a positive, for sure, what I really what I noticed and what is most certainly different is just the speed of everything, how business is done in the US, and just the drive, the competitiveness, the pragmatism. That is something that that speaks to me generally, and I can cope with very well. So that was something that I noticed, which is a big difference, which I also appreciated.
Then those are the 3 words that you describe American business culture with: speed, competitiveness, and pragmatism. Is that it?
Yeah, I would say it's opportunistic, driven, and competitive.
I like that. So then maybe also if you could, looking at the US market and the experiences you've had so far, if there was like one new skill that would help you and the company in the US market right away, instantly, and you could master it, what would that be?
I mean, given our business model, I think the one thing that would certainly, I mean, be amazing if I could master a high level capital raising psychology. That would be something that would get me a long way.
Is there anybody, because that kind of goes to the next question about having dinner with an American business leader, past or present, you will want to meet? Is there somebody in the real estate business or real estate industry that you think has mastered that and you will want to pick their brain?
I mean, really, if I think about it, it might be pretty cliche, but in terms of mastering, I would probably want to have dinner with Warren Buffett because, I mean, he certainly, has the philosophy that combines long-term thinking with integrity and discipline. I think, I mean, that applies to any kinds of investment and also to real estate. So being able to pick his brain, that would be pretty amazing.
I think you can never go wrong with the Oracle of Omaha,
Yeah.
right? So that's good. Talking about the real estate industry in general, of course, we all know real estate is highly regional, highly location driven, but do you see any trends shaping the real estate industry over maybe the next 5 years, 10 years? Maybe how AI could become a component of deal evaluations, deal valuations, stuff like that?
Yes, very much so. I think AI will have a certain impact, especially also on the management side of things, where I think there's a huge opportunity to utilize, AI technology. But I mean, the way we position ourselves and what I believe in is that the affordability crisis, so to speak, will continue, and that's why we focus on workforce housing, because I believe that there is going to be another rise of workforce housing also on the institutional side, where since the interest rate hikes, a lot of institutional money has kind of turned their backs to older vintage, and I think that is going to actually come back again, because what America needs is affordable housing for the workers. And that to me is why I believe in that asset type, and that's why we invest into it. So that's why I see a strong continuous trend for the next 5 years, and that's why we focus on that side. Then yes, AI will for sure play a certain, or will have a huge impact, I think, and it will really set apart the operators and the managers who are able to utilize those technologies versus those who kind of fall behind. I think that's also going to be a trend that we will be seeing. And yeah, and sustainability might maybe not the hottest topic in Texas, but as a whole, that will probably also have more impact on our industry.
And maybe since we're on that topic and you're so hyper focused on Texas, what do you think makes Texas, Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, those areas maybe not only attractive to you as a company, but then also to investors or Americans, apart from no rent control, landlord friendly business or regulatory environment? Is there any? Because as you know, June, July, August is pretty brutal here.
Yeah, it is. That's for sure. But I mean, if you look at it, I mean, what drives people to areas? It's the cost of living. It's the stability. It's security, right? So it's how much money can I make in a place, and how much does it cost me to live there? And then what are the opportunities? So obviously the fact that companies are moving to Texas is a strong driver of population growth, because companies essentially do bring people. And that, by the way, is also something that in the US is handled so much differently than in Europe. If all these companies that moved to Texas recently, I mean, Tesla is a prominent example, that all their employees just got up basically and moved to a different state. Try that in Germany. If BMW decides to move from Munich to Hamburg, they're probably going to lose 90% of their employees in that process. That's also something that's certainly different in Germany than it is here.
That location independence or even flexibility, right? You just people go where they think they have a better life for themselves and their families. And that's also always interesting for me to see as we're talking about market entry as a whole, or even a site selection process for manufacturers or other types of businesses. We never start with the entire map of the United States. Everybody has pre-selected certain areas in the southeast, midwest of the US, and arguably those are the states where also real estate is more attractive than in other places, or being an owner of real estate, or even a landlord of real estate. So do you see any maybe other markets, although you haven't focused on it, but you did mention Texas and beyond? Any other markets that you could currently see that become interesting to you and your company in the future?
Yeah, for sure. I think Arkansas is something that we looked at. I mean, just north of Texas, Oklahoma. Idaho has had like a gigantic population growth, especially post the pandemic.
Great skiing there.
Yeah, exactly. You see, I'm trying to get closer to the
Yes,
mountains here.
yes. I can see the play. I can see the play.
Even the Midwest, I mean, we haven't gone that far to really put much or look much into it, but those could be an interesting market. I mean, for us, for now, it's definitely the Sun Belt, and that we focus on. Now we'll be going to North Carolina, South Carolina, taking a peek at those markets as well. But for now, we're we're sticking to Texas.
I always say if Houston had mountains and Galveston was a white sand beach and we had California-esque temperatures even in June, July, August, the entire world would live here, right? So maybe sometimes
Yep,
you have to fight through certain things in order to get to that affordability that a city like Houston still offers, although it's the fourth
exactly.
largest city in the country. So one thing that you love, as far as you can tell, about doing business in the US that is different from Europe.
Entrepreneurial mindset. That for sure is such a big difference, I think. And I really enjoy the environment as an entrepreneur that I'm surrounded by when I'm here. And frankly, I don't think I would have tackled that same ambitious goal like I have it here back home. Just like I honestly don't think I would have done it. So that is what I really truly like, the entrepreneurial mindset.
So do you think that notion of the American dream, not necessarily rags to riches, but the idea of capitalism and the land of opportunities? Because, like you said, you could have either looked from, let's say, hey, I'm already investing in Germany. How about I go to Austria next? Or how about I do Spain or Norway or Sweden, any of those places? Of all places in the world where you could have put your finger on the globe, you could have said, hey, I'm going there. You picked Houston. So there must be a reason for that. And since you mentioned the entrepreneurial spirit, obviously I have to ask about it.
Yeah, I mean, that, like, honestly, that kind of, I discovered and noticed it tremendously as I was already here. The initial spark obviously was a different one, but that when I came here and noticed it and saw it, and I literally just, I was able to thrive in that environment. And because at first it was just an idea, right? And I was like, well, I'll take a look. And so I came here, and out of that, I take a look became a serious ambition and a serious vision to turn into a reality. And part of it, for sure, is the environment that I'm surrounded by and that entrepreneurial mindset that I mentioned.
Well, if I am someone who really likes your story, who wants to chit chat a bit more about what you've done, or maybe even get some information about the real estate opportunities that you bring to potential investors, or if I just need a really good ski instructor, how can anyone watching us or listening to us reach out to you and connect with you?
Probably the easiest would be on LinkedIn, Sven Kueenle, Kueenle. That's where you can find me, or visit us at rockfish.capital. Those would probably be the best places to connect.
Do you have a personal quote or motto that guides you in business and life?
I don't have like a real motto per se, but I think my whole life's always been sort of following the same pattern, which is I'm a very ambitious guy. And I believe that as long as you have a vision and are truly passionate about something, anything is possible. And that's kind of, I guess, my motto that I follow.
Like that. I like that. And that actually brings us to the final question of this episode, which is something outside of your business, outside of real estate that currently excites you, interests you in life. I know you're very active with the Lareos charity. So anything you personally enjoy right now, obviously also an opportunity to tell the audience about what the Lareos charity does and how people could potentially get involved there, because I think it's a really cool charity. But other than that, anything that you're super excited about, maybe baking or other aspects of life?
Well, honestly, I must say what really excites me the most in life right now is building something that lasts. And that's truly what I'm here for to do right now. And also building something that impacts the lives of a lot of people. And I already mentioned that aspect of the business, but beyond that, for sure, also the capability to give back. And that is through something like Laureus, for example, which is the best thing to do. And it creates a lot of joy to be able to give back to, right? So what Laureus does and what me as an ambassador, what I'm fortunate to do is support projects for those who are less fortunate. And I certainly have been more than lucky in my life. And so it's my duty to also support where I can.
Sven, that was a lot of fun. I really appreciate all your insights. We will obviously put your contact information in the show notes. Please, everybody, feel free to reach out to Sven. I personally wish you and your company nothing but the best. I'm very, very optimistic about the future endeavors that you'll have and your business here in the US. And I just want to thank you for your time, for your insights, for sharing your story. And again, wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you, Manny. It's been my pleasure.
That's it for today. Thank you very much. Wait, before you sign off, there are a few in-person events I will be presenting at soon. On February 5th, 2026 in Stuttgart, on February 11th, 2026 in Cologne, and on February 12th, 2026 in Frankfurt, all of course in Germany. Please consider registering, and if you do, please reach out to let me know. There's nothing like meeting in person. The registration links are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to this channel and share it with your friends and family. Also, please interact with me by liking my episodes, or better yet, leave a comment and review. I would love to hear from you. And yes, I personally read all the feedback and comments. Now, this time for real. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time.